We are currently inundated by the media, at the water cooler, and in every sector of conversation about the Israel and Palestinian conflict. It's easy to get emotional when you see certain things transpiring. The best thing you can do is sit back, meditate, take a breath, and do some research on the topic. Whether you support Israel, you're part of the Free Palestine effort, or you consider yourself neutral, there are a few prerequisites that you have to know. It's kind of like if you want to do algebra 2, you have to do algebra 1. If you want to do economics, you have to do introduction to economics. I enjoy rigorous debate. I enjoy discourse. All I ask is that you do the basic research, you make the blueprint, you lay the foundation of the prerequisites so you can at least understand basic events. In this video series, I am going to talk about the geography of the Middle East. I'm going to talk about the history of the Middle East. I'm going to talk about all kinds of things, current events. But before I do all that, I figure that I must start the introduction. I call it the prerequisites that you must know before you have an opinion or research further. You can come to any conclusion that you want to. It's a free country. But to get to the destination, you have to at least understand how to drive the car. And that's all I'm doing. Here is the first question. Where exactly is the Middle East? The Middle East is a general area, not an exact place. Countries that are always considered Middle Eastern are Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, and the 8 countries of the Arabian Peninsula, which is a body of water in the Middle East. Bahrain, Kuwait, North Yemen, UAE, which is short for United Arab Emirates. Countries that are sometimes considered Middle Eastern are Cyprus, Greece, Libya, and Turkey. What exactly is an Arab? Before World War I, it was a person from Arabia, which is the 8 countries around the Arabian Peninsula. It's similar to Caucasian, even though most white people did not have family that originated in Armenia, didn't originate in Russia or Kazakhstan or any place near the Caucasus, which is a mountain region. We still call ourselves Caucasian. It's similar to Arabs, even though I would consider, at least geographically speaking, someone who is an Arab, someone that lives near the Arabian Peninsula. But the definition has kind of changed after World War I, and I'm going to get into World War I later on, but I'm just here to give you the foundations right now. After World War I, it changed. Anyone whose native language is Arabic, a person who identifies with Arab history, culture, and religion. It is no longer clear and simple. Are all Middle Easterners now Arab? The 8 countries of Arabia are Arabs. And those 8 countries are Bahrain, Kuwait, North Yemen, United Arab Emirates, and those are the countries, the 8 countries that are in that region. There are still millions of people in the Middle East who are not considered Arabs, and millions outside who are. How many Arabs are there? As of 2021, the estimated population of the Arabian Peninsula is approximately 100.5 million people. So as many as 219.9 million Arabs live outside of Arabia. And that doesn't even factor in Arabs that live in the Western Hemisphere. What I mean by that is, in that region of Arabia, there's 100.5. There are actually more people who are considered Arab that live outside of the Arabian Peninsula. And there's even a small few that live in the Western Hemisphere, in France, Great Britain, other places like that. There are 200 million Arabs and over 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. So even though most Arabs are Muslim, most Muslims aren't Arabs. There's other countries that don't have Arabs that live there. Like, one of the countries that would come to mind would be the country of Bangladesh. Most people who are Bangladeshian, and I have a friend who lives here in the United States, she's a Muslim, but she's not an Arab. And there are others like that as well. Where is Palestine? On the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It encompasses parts of modern-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The exact boundaries are a subject of ongoing dispute. Some countries recognize Palestine as an independent state. Some do not. As of 2021, over 140 countries have recognized Palestine as an independent state to some extent. 164 out of the 193 United Nations members recognize Israel as an independent state. Palestine is 96 miles. To put that into perspective, the state of Connecticut is 110 miles and is the third smallest state in the Union. In fact, you could fit 2/3 of the entire territory of what is called Palestine into Connecticut alone. And the name Palestine actually comes from the Philistines. I'm sure if you've had any interactions with the Bible, you remember the story of the Philistines. It was from Herodotus, who is the first historian from Greece, but he called them the Philistines, which is sort of a Greek translation of Palestine, and that's how we get the modern name of Palestine. The first mention of Palestine in the archaeological record, ancient Egypt, and Assyrian text. The earliest reference to the region comes from the ancient pharaoh it spells Merneptah, still, which dates back to around 1207 BCE. The still commemorates the pharaoh's military campaign in Canaan, and it mentions a group of people called Israel in the land of Canaan. It's basically an inscription. I'll put a link below of the inscription, but it's really beautiful architecture, Egyptian architecture, if you take a chance to look at it. Who had the land first? The Jewish claim to the land is rooted in the biblical account of the ancient Israelites who settled in the region around the 12th century BCE and established kingdoms such as Israel and Judah. Jewish identity, religion, and culture has maintained a continuous presence in the region for thousands of years. On the other hand, Arabs, including Muslims, have a long history in the region as well. The Arab conquest of the area began in the 7th century CE, following the rise of Islam. Arab dynasties and empires, including the Abbasids and Ottomans, controlled the land for various periods. No one knows. Historical claims based on archaeological evidence can be limited as interpretations can be influenced by various factors, political and religious bias. Ultimately, the question of who had the land is a matter of interpretation and perspective. Ownership, and I put ownership in quotes, is highly subjective and debated. It doesn't matter what any person's opinion is. If that person is pro-Palestine, if that person is pro-Israeli, if that person is neutral, if they state that we know for a fact based on archaeological evidence that the Israelis had it first, or that the Arabs had it first, they're a lie. I actually read this book right here, and I'll get into my last part, but it's good for, I would say, beginners by Ron David, but the problem in the book is he's kind of biased for the Palestinians. I just want to look sort of at a right down the middle thing, but he talks about Jericho being introduced as the first archaeological evidence, but the problem with that is it wasn't introduced before the still of the Pharaoh that I was talking about. So you can go back and forth. All I'm saying is if somebody tells you the Israelis had it first, and I know that for a fact, or the Palestinians, they're full of SHIT, and you're better off just to educate them, or, they don't know what they're talking about. Judaism is the older religion. It traces its origins back to the ancient Israelites and the Hebrew Bible. The foundational text of Judaism, including the Torah, were compiled and written over several centuries and form the basis of Judaism. Judaism emerged as a religious tradition around 1300 BCE. Islam, on the other hand, originated in the 7th century CE. Judaism is roughly over 3,000 years old, while Islam is 1,400 years old. Therefore, Judaism is roughly 1,600 to 1,700 years older than Islam. And I'm just giving you the facts. I'm not telling you who's right or who's wrong personally. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not religious myself. I am more of an agnostic. I don't subscribe to any religion. I'm just sort of giving you the facts. Now, the last part that's fundamental is understanding the religion, parts of it. I'm not going to go into everything about it. In the Hebrew Bible, there's a man named Abraham. Both sides agree that there was someone called Abraham. Abraham became the father of many nations. He was promised by God, or Allah, whichever one you subscribe to, that he was going to have a nation of many men. He was going to be the father of that. In the Christian version, he is becoming 100 years old. He's 99 years old, near 100. It's been a long time since I've read the Bible, but he's almost 100 years old. He's right around it. He gets patient, even though God promised that he was going to be the father of many nations and things like that. He gets impatient. So Hagar, who is his house servant at the time, he ends up, doing the dirty with her. His wife Sarah knows about it, and he has a son named Ishmael. Ishmael ends up getting banished by Abraham, and Ishmael grows up to be wild. He grows up to be the father of the Palestinian people, the Arabs. Years later, he has a son named Isaac, and Isaac ends up becoming the father of Israel. When he wrestles with an angel, and this is in the Bible, I'm not saying I believe this or that you should, it's just in the Bible. He wrestles with an angel, and later on, Isaac's name becomes Israel, and Isaac becomes the father of Israel. He has a son named Joseph, and I'm sure you guys know the Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors story. He has 12 sons, and they all become the 12 tribes of Israel, and he becomes the father of Israel. And Israel, according to the Bible, the Jews are God's chosen people. Now, according to Islam, it is vice versa. It flips it over. So, in Islam, Ishmael is actually the chosen one, and Isaac, or Israel, is the son that gets banished with Sarah, and so now you see how they sort of lay a claim to that land, and that's where the whole religion thing gets to, it runs into each other. It's like two trains that are colliding in the same direction, and that's sort of the kerfuffle, that's sort of the mess of the religious part of it. But that's just fundamental things. If you want to have an opinion, you can reach whatever conclusion you want, but if you don't know where the Middle East is, you don't know where Palestine is, you don't know the difference between Judaism and Islam, and you don't know the basic foundations, educate yourself. In part 2, I will talk about the history of the region. Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to refer to it as.